Jordan Belfort and Zig Ziglar, two of the most famous salespeople in history. One based his style on pure persuasion, the other based his style on pure integrity. But which style actually works today? Let's take a look. Now, Jordan Belfort, you probably know him from The Wolf of Wall Street, a movie that's made a while ago, very famous in the business and sales sphere, where Leonardo DiCaprio is basically acting as him. It's a very cool movie, check it out. Now, Jordan Belfort is known also for his system of selling, which is the straight line method, which you can learn more about in the book, The Way of the Wolf. I recommend you to read that book. It's very cool. Now, Zig Ziglar, he's like a little bit more classical. He's actually one of the most famous, like old school salesmen. He unfortunately died a couple years back, but Zig Ziglar was really the salesman in the classic time that like was the most proud of his profession, and he's the one that really made it like a lot of people look up to him and look up to sales. He was also someone who is Christian, so that was a big part of his personality, and that also reflected in his sales style. That's why he's known for his integrity as well. Zig Ziglar wrote a lot of books. He gave a lot of seminars, not just to salespeople, but also to people in the government and people that just wanted to get better with influence. Now, let's actually compare them, because Zig Ziglar is more like the example for the traditional older school of selling, and Jordan Belfort is a bit more recent. So let's take a look at Jordan Belfort. Jordan Belfort is known for his straight line selling system. That's a system that's very, it's in the name, like it's a straight line. So it's really no bullshit, moving the conversation forward in like the most efficient way possible. And he literally has, in his book, you can read about his methods. He literally says like, well, in the conversation, you can't spiral off to Pluto, nor can you spiral off to Uranus. That's like some kind of quote. If you read it, you probably know what I'm talking about. But basically it means when you're talking about the prospect, you always want to keep the situation relevant to his situation and also what you're selling. So that, you don't start talking about things that are irrelevant, or maybe hobbies of your, aunt Irene. So you want to keep things relevant. And he really has a good system for that. Now, Jordan Belfort sold a lot of like smaller type of deals in like some type of investment strategies, penny stocks or something. You can see it in the movie. And so his style is really based a lot on speed, because he sold a lot on the phone, so he didn't need that much depth because the sales were smaller. It's a lot more similar to cold calls, actually. But on the one hand, his style was very, to the point, straight line selling system. On the other hand, he had a lot of like psychological tactics or like insight in persuasion. So that he could like understand people psychologically and move things forward. So for example, one example of that is like future pacing, which is like he had like a lot of closing techniques. And so when you ask for the close, the prospects might give you a response in the range of like 1 to 10, like 10 being he's absolutely sure he wants to go with it, 0 being he absolutely hates you and your product. So usually when you try to close, you'll get somewhere around 7, sometimes 8, often you'll get 6 or 5. So the goal is then to acknowledge the other person's state, the way he is feeling about your product or in the moment, by mirroring his state. Because what a lot of salespeople will try to do is the prospect will say, well, that doesn't really seem so great. And then a lot of salespeople will try to rebuttal, hey, this is really great, it's absolutely great, and I'm glad you like it. So like they'll ignore, the way that the prospect is feeling. Now, Jordan Belfort says you need to acknowledge that by mirroring his state. And once you kind of mirror that, then you can lead things, you can pace things, and you can give more reasons why it might actually be better than he thinks or perceives it, right? So it's a very elaborate thing, and it's a very good system. But it's more for like cold calling and like smaller type of deals. But he's a very, very good salesman. Now let's take a look at Zig Ziglar. Now Zig Ziglar was known in his time for selling cookware. Like that was just what a lot of salespeople did back in the day, like door to door, and then also like on the streets where people like gathered and then they sold like pans and pots. And that way they made money. He also sold like, I believe, car sales and insurance and things like that, but he was really known for door to door. That's where he really sharpened his skills. Now Zig Ziglar is probably one of the most experienced salesmen. Like he has the most years of experience, and he's probably also one of the most passionate salesmen. So that really reflects when you read his book, because when you read like a lot of sales books, there will be like, well, hey, this is my system, you know, I have like an intro, discovery, a pitch, and a close, and this is how it works. Now Zig Ziglar actually doesn't really have like a system like that, but the way his insight into like psychology and the whole thing about speaking and voice and persuasion, it reflects a lot in like the micro skills and like the way he talks a lot in the book about how it's important to have the right tonality, how you can sharpen your voice, how you can be more articulate, and there's a lot of just like insights that he gives that a lot of other salespeople, sales gurus either don't. And for me, that gives a lot of insight. But it's not just that, it's also that he has a lot of integrity as someone who is like into Christianity. So that's a little bit rare in sales, because like there will be a lot of people that like, they will understand that you need to empathize in order to solve the problem. But Zig Ziglar really takes it a step further, and he's really coming it from like a place of much higher integrity than even most professional salespeople. And that's also, I think, what makes it unique, and what makes it like that he can, gives a lot more trust to people as well. And that's also something that's really important in sales. So Zig Ziglar is really known for his integrity and just the sheer amount of experience that he has. Even though I'm not sure, but I don't think he's like a top-notch businessman. But like in terms of like sales, he's like one of the best people you can learn from, even though he's like a little bit more old school. Now, Jordan Belfort, on the other end of the spectrum, actually is someone who his sales journey started a little bit shady, well, quite a bit shady. And he actually like didn't really sell in an ethical way at the start. And he ended up going to jail for that. But I still think it's an inspiring story, not because the bad things he did, but because I think there are sometimes things we can learn from the people who can go astray. And I think we can learn from that, from sometimes a darker aspect of life. That doesn't mean you should go there, but I think it's good to understand it. And even sometimes, in some cases, I don't know, I can just sometimes relate to it. But it's interesting because like in his book, he's actually quite ashamed of like what he did, I think, or like I think he starts to understand that it's not really the way to go about life. Even though maybe he did have some fun back in the days, I think he understands or like sees that it's not really a good way to go about life, and that's I think interesting. And I think if you have the experience in that, you probably shouldn't chase that. But I think if you experience that, it's more powerful than just believing it because someone told it to you. But yeah, this is my idea. Anyway, so which sales style works today? To be honest, I think Zig Ziglar's sales style is a little bit more applicable today, at least for what I sell, which is like more longer sales, more B2B sales, because you need more trust, you need more integrity. And Jordan Belfort is probably better for like cold calls, but like for the really deep sales, he does do that as well. But personally, I think that Zig Ziglar is the winner here in terms of like when you need like a deeper sales conversation. But I still recommend that you read about Jordan Belfort, watch the movie because it's cool, and you can learn a lot from him as well. Anyway, this was Bert. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any comments, ideas, or things, maybe stupid things I said that you disagree with. Let me know. I'll hear from you. I'll see you next time. Cheers.